A bombshell announcement you saw first on 5. Josh Kraft announces he's suspending his campaign for Boston mayor, clearing the way for a second term for Michelle Wu. It's time to go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
A whirlwind week in the race for Boston mayor. Thank you for joining us. I'm Charmin Sacchetti.
And I'm Erica Tarantel in for Ed. The week began with 4 candidates on the ballot for the city's top job. On Tuesday night, voters narrowed it down to 2, with Mayor Michelle Wu and philanthropist Josh Kraft taking the top 2 spots in the preliminary election, qualifying them for the November ballot.
But Kraft was a distant second, nearly 50 points behind the incumbent, and less than 48 hours later, suspending his campaign, clearing the way for Mayor Wu to win a second term. Now, Kraft announced the news in an exclusive interview with News Center 5 anchor Maria Stefanos.
In a moment, Maria joins us to take us behind the scenes of that interview. But first, here's how Kraft explained his decision.
Josh Kraft, you are here at Channel 5 and we appreciate it. You have an announcement to make.
Look, when I got into the mayor's race, it was a continuation of what I've done for 35 years. Listening to people across the city of Boston, and not just listening to them, but learning from them, understanding their needs, their hopes, their challenges. I started to think about the next 8 weeks of this campaign. 8 weeks of a lot of mudslinging, political talk, but no talk about what really matters. The issues that impact every single Bostonian across the city of Boston. And the country's at a place now, we see it every day, where the vitriol and the political arguing and fighting, it's not leading to anything but anger and negativity.
So your decision?
My decision is to suspend my candidacy for mayor as of today.
Tuesday's numbers were tough. Is that the reason why?
It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Is I got into this to make an impact, as I've done my whole life. Build a sense of community to make change for the greater good. And when I kept looking at the next 8 weeks and the negativity and all that it was going to be about, I realized, wow, I could do more. And I could make a better impact for the residents of the city of Boston.
And how would you do that?
So, as we all know, there's a lot of issues that many Bostonians struggle with housing, schools. But the issue that comes up the most and can never seem to be fixed is the human tragedy of Mass and Cass. And I am going to work with, I've spoken to leaders over there at the Gavin Foundation, at the Phoenix, who do recovery work, substance use disorder work, support people. And I've talked to them today, and we are going to work together to take the first steps to really find an end to the humanitarian crisis that is Mass and Cass.
So are you taking the money that you would have used for this campaign and you're going to invest it?
So what I'll be doing is the money that I would have needed to get through these next 8 weeks of mudslinging is take that money and some more money and work with the Gavin Foundation in the Phoenix to take those first steps to find a real solution to the human tragedy and public safety crisis of Mass and Cass, as well as to re-energize a similar program, Operation Exit, which helps people coming home from incarceration not just find jobs, but find careers. And I look forward to working with the organizations and the people, as I've done my whole life, create a sense of community and work together to make change for the greater good.
All right, Maria joins us now to take us behind the scenes of that interview. Maria, first of all, I have to ask you, what was the mood like when you sat down with Josh Kraft for that one-on-one?
I would say that he was disappointed, and it was a decision that he talked to his family, he talked to his advisors, he talked to his supporters, he talked to everybody, and he knew that there was no path forward. So he was, of course, disappointed when you're running for mayor and you say that you believe in the city of Boston, like he certainly does, and Mayor Wu does as well. And then you make this decision. He got into the race for a reason, and to get out of the race, of course, there's disappointment.
So, Maria, immediately after it was declared that Wu was the winner last Tuesday night, although the numbers hadn't completely settled in, didn't know just how much she won by, he did commit to staying in the race. But then the day after, he made no public appearances. What do you think changed? I mean, the numbers settled for sure by the second day.
Right, and that's a good point, Erica. I mean, I think that the polling had shown that things were difficult and this was an uphill climb. And then, of course, we had Tuesday, and I think that perhaps he just said, you know, this is something that I don't think that this is possible. But he also kept talking about mudslinging, and he kept talking about negativity and nasty attacks. And I said, well, Josh, you participated in those as well. I mean, there was a back and forth between both of you where you were talking about, you were being negative to each other. And he said, we were. And that's when I realized that's not why I got into this race. And that's politics, and everybody understands that that's politics. But that's not why he got into this race. And he said he got into this race because he wanted to get back to his roots. He wanted to give to the city of Boston. And I think that realization that this is politics, that was a sobering reality, that's part of it as well. And certainly he understands that. Anybody understands that when they get into a race. But he made the decision to say, you know what, instead of spending $3 million, $2 million on the next 8 weeks, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to invest it into a couple of organizations, Phoenix and the Gavin Foundation, the recovery community. And he said he wants to put back into the community the things that he was talking about on the campaign trail.
Maria,
that's massive.
That was a very generous moment, I thought, you know, in the course of this interview when he talked about, you know, giving all of this money to help substance abuse treatment and essentially clean up Mass and Cass. You know, what did you take away from that?
Well, he said, I'll tell you what he said. He said he wanted to end his campaign the way he began it, which was talking about something that really mattered. And that's the crisis at Mass and Cass and that whole area. And that's something that you heard him, Charmin, on the campaign trail, constantly beat that drum. And it's interesting because when he came and he said, okay, this is it, I'm suspending my campaign. But then but usually I've suspended my campaign, I thank my supporters, and that's it. But there was something that had moved forward, and then because of that, I think that made a huge difference.
Maria Stefanos, great job with that exclusive interview. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us the inside story. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. We did ask Mayor Wu to join us this morning. She declined our invitation.
Now, the two candidates were scheduled to face off in a debate right here at Channel 5 before the November election. When we come back, the two journalists who would have joined me in the questioning, they will be our guests. Stay with us.